This is definitely a moment when something has happened that I least expected. I didn't think the new year would start off with a major lead, and I certainly didn't guess that my first case file update would be the infamous Wyoming Incident. For those who don't know, the Wyoming Incident is currently the longest running alternate reality game I've ever covered, and it might have been the first major creepypasta legend online. I made a video on the project back in May of last year that tells the story in detail, but here's a quick review. The Wyoming Incident is mostly known as a series of really abstract videos that began circulating online in the mid-2000s. The first video that gained any sort of notoriety appeared on August 9, 2006, and came with a story about how someone in Wyoming's Niobrara County hacked a local television station to broadcast this video. There are plenty of creepy subject list video channels you can find on YouTube who claim that it was a real event, like the Max Headroom Incident, but rest assured, the Wyoming Incident is just online storytelling, most likely inspired by the Max Headroom Incident. It was a popular creepypasta story before creepypasta was even a thing, and just came with a video element to help the story go viral. Those who dug around online pulled up more videos and got involved in a major storytelling experience surrounding the uploads. It was revealed the uploads actually began in March of 2006, making the series older than most people thought by about 5 months. The Wyoming Incident then revealed itself to be even older when the videos led back to a forum called the Happy Cube, containing threads and posts dating back to August 29, 2004. It's debatable whether or not you can include the origins of the Happy Cube as the start of the Wyoming Incident, because evidence does suggest that it was trying to be its own ARG project to begin with, but the fact remains that this project at least goes back to March of 2006, making it over 10 years old. What you need to know about the Wyoming Incident if you haven't seen my full video is that this thing is an aggressive zombie. Just when you think it's finally dead, whether through lack of participation, game jacking, or its own hand, it comes right back. And believe me when I tell you, I haven't seen it make a comeback as hard as it just did. On December 9, 2016, the original account that opened the board, Jack Q. Pembry, posted a new thread titled, "Debts Due." He wrote only one message, "And they will be paid." Hovering over the text revealed it was a link to his SoundCloud account, with just one upload by a user whose name was a series of numbers. The title of the track is a clue to what we're hearing and how we've been given the power to hear it. Fun bug, mic active, headphone inactive. The audio track is a recording of someone having a conversation, completely unaware they're being recorded. Their device has been bugged. We start in the middle of the conversation, which, again, we can only hear one side of. I won't be playing the whole thing, just the portions we need. A link to the original audio file will be available in the video description for you. During the opening sentence, remember what I just said about how old the Wyoming Incident appears to be.
The better part of a decade, and that is too fucking long. Yeah, I'm getting a little frustrated. See, I'm fucking sure there's something in this. I don't know why I downloaded it. There's an attachment that I didn't download. See, that one, I don't even recognize that file type. I've scanned both of them, and apparently there's not any malware in it, but I don't really understand any of this stuff. I gotta be honest with you. No. I just out of the fucking blue. Shit like this, it's always phrases. Like, he's not making any attempt to disguise who he is at this point. I got a lot of emails from this guy, and it was always a different email account, or it was almost always a different email account. And they were all phrases just like this. So, fucking stupid me, what do? I open it. Like I do every time he sends me one, because I'm a fucking moron. There's so much bullshit surrounding this. It just all seems like a big joke. That's all it seems like. It seems like a joke. 3 calls in 4 days. It's exhausting. I'm sick and tired of this. You know, because with him it's always long gaps where it finally seems like everything's over with, and then boom, boom, boom. It's like a shit ton of things just happening at once. Like it just occurs to him, I've got to torment this guy who I've never met, only had to work with a handful of times. I'm just gonna dial him up, send him an email, annoy the shit out of him. I already did that. Twice. Yeah, last year, when I sent you the new number. What do you think that was about? It's always him. And he knows my address. I don't see how he could have all of this other information and not have that. No, because my main concern is that one day I want to end up with him or something that he's left behind on my doorstep. This guy, something isn't right with him. He's not completely there. And he's been like this to varying degrees ever since we started working together. The first, 3, he was more or less normal, or at least as close as he gets to that. But I mean, even after that point, when I started editing stuff and when I started having any sort of input at all, he's just gotten weirder and weirder. And, a year will pass sometimes, and it's just complete and total silence. But it's like he gets agitated or something. The last one I got was the last one I got. And 2 of them, he divvies out to people I still don't know anything about. Because I wasn't really, that's what I don't get, because I wasn't involved at that point. I have not been involved in this for a really long time. And he just rambles on about stuff like that. But it's impossible with him to figure out what exactly, true, or what's just this morbid shit that he likes to make up. I don't know what he's going to do. Because each time this starts, it's more aggressive than it was the last time. And I've heard things have happened that I know about that I don't think people aren't going to believe me. But I just got this gut feeling that this time something bad is going to happen.
The first question someone might have about this track is who they're listening to. Based on evidence from the case we've already gone over, and new evidence that we're about to review, I can actually answer that. It's Senor Bambos, a major figure from the project who initially seemed to be a game-jacking troll, and then later turned out to be a pawn for the game. Bambos made his first appearance as a member of the Something Awful forums who took credit for the Wyoming Incident. He originally claimed it was all a plan by him and a few others on Something Awful, but ended up taking back his claim later, long after the game had continued, saying that he had been pressured to hijack the project when a friend from Something Awful, Viral Detector, ended up derailing everything. As Bambos put it, he had been behind the project, but only to a certain extent. He was a tool used by the real person running all of this, who had Bambos help deliver some of the Wyoming Incident videos online, do role-playing for the board, and generally keep things on track. He became wrapped up in the Wyoming Incident after hearing a local radio station DJ talk about alternate reality games. Bambos went to the radio station's forum, found a thread discussing alternate reality games, and posted saying that he'd like to take part in one someday. Later on that same forum, he was contacted by a user saying he could definitely help with that. He had a game in mind and wanted some assistance making it happen. Bambos agreed to help, but obviously, things didn't end up going as smoothly as he might have hoped. Until now, that was our history of the user known as Senor Bambos, a troll hijacking the game who later admitted that he wasn't a troll at all. He had been involved, but he didn't have any real power over the game and had no idea who was really running it. He's been kept in the dark as much as anyone else. The Puppet Master, or Game Master as those who run these projects are called, sent the videos to Bambos through email and told him how to write the descriptions. He constantly changed up his email address so Bambos doesn't know if he can actually still contact him, and he knows very little about the Puppet Master, no identifying information whatsoever. The man heard in the audio clip has been involved for about a decade, the span of time we've seen for the life of the Wyoming Incident. He's received a lot of emails from the person harassing him, and those emails have almost always come from different accounts. The man in the audio clip has worked with the man harassing him in the past. That was their relationship. They worked on something together, primarily corresponding through email, just like Bambos did with the Puppet Master. And now we have our new evidence. On December 21st, 2016, Jack Q. Pembry posted again with a thread titled, "This is him." The post appears to be some kind of collection of different pieces of messages. It doesn't feel like it all came from the same source. The opening statement is very interesting. I think the most major issue lies in him trusting anyone enough to present the material as he intended it to be presented, especially after the first derailment of his propaganda push and the later edits to his videos. I don't know. He keeps himself at a remove. I suggest that might imply him being naturally distrustful, but when he does trust someone, he can be almost wondrously naive. We warned him about Bambos and Viral Detector, but he had invested too much one-on-one time with them to drop them. He still clings to them. Someone is going to be hurt. Whoever wrote this was talking about our Puppet Master character. The man in the audio clip mentioned making edits to a few of the videos he was receiving, which caused the video maker to respond with strange behavior. Bambos is mentioned directly, and so is his partner who derailed the game for something awful, Viral Detector. The next post on December 30th, 2016 has a long record detailing a lot of history and movements by a subject whose name has been redacted. For the sake of simplicity, and following an old theory by Senor Bambos in his big reveal post that he believes the Puppet Master was a something awful user named OC James, we'll say that this character's name is Jim. Jim's history is followed throughout several states and periods of reckless traveling behavior, ending with a section about Senor Bambos. The location has been withheld, but that's not as important as the information we're given. Bambos seems to think that he has not actually encountered Jim in person. I have reason to doubt that. Bambos claims he has been stalked online and over the phone by Jim since the conclusion of their project, but it took some time before he realized who I was talking about. Apparently, he never knew Jim by name. Remember the audio clip segment where the man mentioned being called by his stalker 3 times in 4 days? Another match for Bambos being the guy. Bambos says a little over a year after he moved in, an older man moved in across the hall 3 doors down. Up until about a month before this new tenant moved in, Bambos had been receiving harassing emails and calls non-stop. They ended with no real resolution, and the timing of the new tenant's arrival seemed suspect. Bambos conceded that between his forum accounts, emails to Jim, phone number, and involvement on the project, it would have been possible for someone to deduce his identity and location. The man kept running into Bambos in the parking lot and hall at all hours of the day. The man would make constant, unsuccessful attempts at small talk. His voice seemed familiar to Bambos, but it didn't seem to completely match the voice on the calls he had recorded. Still, he appeared to be watching and waiting for Bambos. Eventually, Bambos had a paranoid breakdown and began screaming at the man in the hallway. The two talked with a neighbor mediating, and while he wouldn't give specifics, he did say the conversation eased his suspicions. Bambos later moved out for unrelated reasons. I think we have enough testimony now to conclude the audio clip was indeed a recording of Bambos. It's unknown who he was talking to, but we know what it was about. His description of the history with the Puppet Master explains a few things about the Wyoming incident. It happens in phases, he said, long gaps of time in which nothing happens, followed by sudden downpours of activity. Makes sense for the way that this project seems to die and then re-emerge every few years. The Puppet Master is also a really disturbed individual. He's not just playing a game, he's obsessed with keeping it going and may believe everything that he's been pushing throughout the story. The post made on December 30th with the timeline of Jim's history and movement seems to come from a report made by some kind of investigator. Here is a rough breakdown of his movements and the activities I've been able to establish per your request. Like I said before, this is not necessarily our guy. Once again, I must emphasize that there are several persons involved whose identities and actions may have become intertwined. Make of this what you will. There's a lot of interesting things going on with this guy. You so sure you want to write a book about just an art project? Either way, hope it's going well. Let me know what you'll be needing next. We also didn't seem to get the original copy of this report. The note at the top lets us know that Jack Q. Pembry is not actually an ally. I have chosen which parts to keep and which parts to dispose of. Sometimes an edit will be marked and noted, sometimes not. The same goes for omissions and name alterations. Nothing here is certain. Isn't that the appeal? How will the wait feel when you realize what this is, audience? We've been played with all along, but now it's really obvious. I suspect that Jim, or the Puppet Master, or however he refers to himself, is providing the information to us and he enjoys taunting players. Take a look at the end of the message from December 21st. No mystery here. This has been engineered well enough to function in the right hands. The operators are flawed. My requests have been ignored. This was mine. Do you know how close I am to you right now? Do you know I can see you through the dark? Can you make it to the light switch before I have your neck in my hands? You won't see my face. There's a lot of information that's been written down in the latest post by Jack Q. Pembry, so I'll provide a link to the page listing his latest post by order of most recent to oldest in the video description. For now, here's a quick rundown of our friend Jim, who tormented Senor Bambos to the point of having a mental breakdown and moving away. Jim was raised in the state of Indiana and had a fascination with magic as a child. As he grew older, his interests turned to psychology, telecommunications, and government. Jim's friends could be described as outcasts and he may have had more enemies than allies, but it was his own doing, leading harassment campaigns against people who angered him. Jim moved to Ohio after high school and met a friend who was referred to by a few different names. Together, they ran scams to get by and were no strangers to shady and illegal activity. They ended up in Wyoming after running out of luck taking advantage of people in Ohio, and eventually found someone new to leech off of named Martin. The man put up with their presence for a while but soon grew sick of having two very sketchy guys living with him. Martin moved to California, but somehow Jim tracked him down and again moved in with Martin. During their time away from each other, it seems that Jim had developed a fascination with the internet and computers. He had also gained another interest: the power of creating negative emotions in other people. Jim had even written his own research and theory papers on the subject, despite belonging to absolutely no group, club, or university studying anything at all. Jim began leading Martin to believe he had murdered people in his absence, intentionally giving him hints that he was a killer. He built a wall of computers in his room and bought a filing cabinet, which Martin later found was filled with identification documents for many people, most of them being children who died in Ohio. He even had their obituaries filed away. Shortly after Martin became aware of just how many secrets his roommate had, Jim fled to Canada, where his activity could be tracked to the town of Yellowknife. If you have a sharp memory, you might recall that name mentioned in my full video on the Wyoming Incident. One of the original videos had been purchased by a man named Danny visiting Yellowknife one summer. A police altercation in Yellowknife had Jim on the run again. There's a possibility he met up with his accomplice from Wyoming here and there, but not enough information to make a definite call. Some stops in Jim's history have been withheld. All we have after this is the contact with Bambos. As for the other post from December 21st, that's a tough one. We have to gauge where the pieces come from and who said them. There's talk about a PDF file with information that may not be legal, and a concern about there being no mythos in it, so it shouldn't be on the boards. Someone pipes up and basically says they really don't care about any more mythos shit, which I personally find funny and, honestly, enjoy seeing. The biggest issue I had with the Wyoming incident was so major I had to highlight it more than once in the first video, and it was entirely focused on mythology. This game had an insane amount of heavy, overbearing lore and mythos building involved that just didn't move anything forward, and it made reading the forums a long, painful chore. I'm not sure if this comment is an out-of-game reply saying the message was received or if it's a part of the game, but in either case, I'm glad to see that we're heading more into the territory of genuine intrigue now instead of heavy fantasy world building. Speaking of fantasy and mythos, whoever was involved in this dialogue about mythology was concerned about involving certain aspects of it. If our benefactor was thinking clearly, he would not want to open us up to further investigation by legitimate police authorities. Like I said, it's not that I necessarily know the legality of the whole thing, but it seems troubling to say the least. Do you want to incite violence? How would you feel if a player did indeed make a murder happen? It's not directive and it's not a ritual for the game. It is simply a way a person could theoretically pull out these acts and get away with it, but none of it is anything new to someone who's familiar with true crime. This isn't the anarchist cookbook. Father wants it and we need more found documents, not mythos. I vote post. Whoever was arguing about this decides to shelve the PDF posting. Posting it would be unfathomably irresponsible. So now we have a document with some serious content being kept a secret and have seen that there's a group of people making decisions over the board. The mystery grows. And finally, a touch of commentary on Jim. He's hijacked phone lines, broadcasts, and I'm sure a good 20 years ago, he could have kicked up a hell of a storm on Usenet or something. He is unrelentingly unpleasant. He understands the fundamentals of video editing. That is it. That's the extent of his talents. He talks about viral content like my dad does. Do you really believe half the shit he says? Guarantee you he's BPD or something. And I believe the final statement comes from the Puppet Master as well. Or Jim, or Joe, or whoever is operating Jack Pembry's account now. Activity really is heating up on the Wyoming incident. Its return wasn't expected, especially with so little activity for previous visits after the game died down. I really like where this is going though. I'm surprised at the direction being taken in the best possible way. And like Bambo said on the phone, I think this is going to be a much bigger phase than it was before. We've had a sound file here or there early in the game, but nothing like the recording we were given to start the new phase. I am genuinely excited for this. I don't know where it's going to lead, but it's a break in the case that's very welcome, and I enjoy the direction I'm seeing so far. The return of the longest running alternate reality game I've ever seen. This is a hell of a way to start the year. I hope you're as happy about the revival of the Wyoming incident as I am. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. And if you aren't familiar with this project, do take a look at my previous video on it. Please do excuse the audio quality if you find it lacking. It was recorded with the old microphone, which is now very much retired. I'd like to extend appreciation to you for watching, and for all of my supporters on Patreon who make it possible to cover all the major developments coming from the Wyoming incident and other cases as they happen. Stick around to see the names of all of these awesome patrons at the end of the video. Thanks for joining me in the dark again this evening. Once more, I'm Nick Nocturne, and just like the oldest, wildest open case in my files, I'll be seeing you again real soon. Sleep tight.